EGM Network.
Hi, welcome to Silver Linings. I am one of your hosts. I'm Janine Barrows, and I'm here with my friend and co-host, Raul Perez.
Hello, everybody.
And today we are very lucky to have with us in the studio a local hero for some families, but Susan Chesnutt, and she is a local specialized family attorney. She's got a lot of extra asterisks behind her name that allow her to be a true advocate for families and children here on the Treasure Coast. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for such a great introduction. I appreciate that. It's very flattering. Thank you very much.
Those who know you here in the community know that your heart and your time is vested in our children and our families. So we appreciate your time. And we were talking earlier when you first came in, before we put the cameras on and turned on the mics, a little bit about what drives you to be in this role. And how did you come to be the super advocate for children and families?
It's not a secret that I was a foster child and I aged out of the system. I was not adopted. Mm-hmm. And I know we're going to be talking about adoption today. And that was a personal choice of mine. And just seeing families and knowing, I think my main goal in life is to have that family that you dream of as a child, the safe family. Mm-hmm. And when I see families struggling, all I want to do is help them put it back together because I don't want to see it fall apart.
Yeah, I imagine. So it's personal and professional.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I'm sure that's why you are seen the way you are in our community. Without a doubt. I didn't mean to interrupt. I heard you breathe in.
No. I was going to say thank you for joining us. I'm glad we have a chance to speak to you about adoption. And for me to learn as well, because I don't deal with adoption in my area of law. So it'd be great to get an understanding of some of the questions that I might have to look out for when people might come to me and ask certain questions regarding adoption.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much for having me.
So adoption is a really deep conversation. Mm-hmm. And we don't obviously have the time to go really deeply into some of them. But I feel like it is a conversation that we should be having publicly for the general individuals in our community to gain and garner some knowledge about this topic. Adoption is very common today. And yet the conversations are very quiet about it. Mm-hmm. And with conversation, we gain knowledge, right, and help lead us on to our next steps usually. Mm-hmm. So our hope today is that you're able to share some of the basics and the identifying definitions of the terminology and the types of adoptions that exist, okay, and possibly some of the pitfalls that may come with it and how they could possibly avoid those things.
All right.
Now, I know that's a lot in 24 minutes, Susan, so
I can do it. I can do it.
We're going to try some speed knowledge here today.
Yes, let's do it.
So how long have you been working with families?
I have been working with families since I graduated from undergraduate, which was 2002. But I've been doing family law and child welfare specifically for about 15 years or so.
Okay, so you're far from a newbie.
Oh, yes. Plus my personal experience
brings in a whole nother level of understanding from a different perspective that most families approaching adoption would never have.
A lot of times it's about knowing your situation and what's going to be the path of least resistance, as well as the least costly path to getting there to achieve what most everyone agrees is the goal most of the time.
Okay. Mm-hmm. All right. That's a nice way of saying we don't all agree at the same time, but there's some ways that we can come to the table together.
There's ways that we can make it happen. Absolutely.
I love that.
But there's a bunch of different types of adoptions. You all have heard, and we all think about the babies being adopted from the hospital. Mm-hmm. You know, there's that adoption where it's somebody's either paid for the adoptive parent to have, their care while they were pregnant. They planned all along to pick the adoptive family and those type of things. There's that.
Yes.
There's also, kinship relative adoptions where perhaps you had a grandchild or something of that nature for a few years, and eventually it comes to the point in time where it's time to adopt, or it just came to be that you wanted to adopt for whatever situation it was. And those are kind of my favorites, I think. Then there's the foster care adoptions. You don't have to necessarily, if you're going to adopt, be involved in the process all the way through. But if you're a relative in that arena, it's kind of the same. But once a child is freed up for adoption through a child abuse case of some sort, then that child is open to be adopted by anyone in the community, or there's specific ways to have designated adoptive parents, but it doesn't really happen that way. There's adoptions that are through state to state, and those are very complicated, and they take a very long time because we have an interstate compact agreement with all 50 states that we all have to comply with the same rules. They require home studies and all sorts of things. The kinship care does not. The foster care adoptive process most definitely does. That's probably the most strict besides the rules that ICPC has. That's what you call the interstate compact for children. And then the international one, I don't do international adoptions. You have to do the Hague Convention. I think most of the times when you do international adoptions, you have to adopt in the home country, and then you have to start the immigration process, and then you have to, go through the United States citizen.
Wow.
And, apply for a visa and all those types of things. So that's very complicated.
Logical, but complicated.
And then another type of adoption that I do frequently, which is one of my favorites, is a step-parent adoption. Those are pretty easy to do. And then the next easiest one, I think, if any of them were to be easy, is you can adopt an adult. You can be adopted as an adult. That only requires a notice requirement to your biological parent, and they don't get to object. So it's just notice, which I find kind of funny. Like, why tell them if they don't have any right to object? But you can do adult adoptions, and those are really interesting because they're pretty quick. And as long as everybody's consenting, if you were married and you were adopting an adult, your spouse has to consent. There's a couple consent rules that go in there, but that one's kind of neat too, because sometimes, and if you don't mind me going on a little bit, sometimes a child will want to be adopted either in a step-parent adoption or by their grandparent or whoever it is, and they just can't get their biological parent to agree. And if the biological parent doesn't agree, that's when you got to go down the really long legal road of process where you're basically putting on a whole case and trying to prove that parent unfit or whatever it is. Well, if you just wait, if that kid's 16 when they're asking to be adopted, if you wait till they're 18, you ain't got to do all that.
That's really interesting.
It's about strategy too. So, when you're looking to adopt, you need to consider the age of the child, the relationship, if you have one. If you just want to go rescue a child from foster care, I could have been rescued. I was rescued. There are kids that need to be rescued. There's all kinds of adoptions. And I like doing pretty much all of them. I haven't done all of these, like not the international, but
wow.
It's neat. I've seen every bit of these different types of adoptions.
I didn't even think about the adult adoption. And in reality, I come from a split household. And when I was younger, that was a conversation that came up. And my biological parent on the other side that was not in my life was like, no.
Exactly.
No. And I didn't even think about that later.
Control. But once
it's amazing how, there are people in some young people's lives who actually take care of them, and then for some reason the biological parent, when it comes time to, well, let's make this formal, they have an objection for some reason.
Yeah,
I always find
that ego, but or in my case,
agree,
I thought
but
it was
it's
ego.
just one of those things where I'm just like, now you want to contribute, now you want to have a say.
Right.
It's just to me it's one of those things. Well, obviously we deal in legal issues all the time that sometimes don't make sense, but that's just one that sticks out. I'm like, really? Now?
No.
But
right.
We're finicky animals as humans, you never know.
We sure are, but there's a path to everything. So just because they don't want to consent doesn't mean it's not possible. It just means it's harder.
I love that. So
Right.
we talked a little bit. We're getting ready to go to break, but I kind of want to recap. We talked a
Okay.
little bit about the types of adoptions: interfamily, interstate, international, and general populace desire to adopt for whatever various reasons. And so that covers a lot of basis. And then this adult adoption, which is new to me. I just kind of like, wow, I'm listening to you thinking, who would that be? And then you further explained, and I went, oh, that would be somebody like me.
It could apply to a lot of people. A lot of people don't know. They don't really know. They just get the no when they're younger, and they just assume that means no.
Yeah.
But once you're grown, you can do whatever you want. And
like
that's part
that.
of the joys of turning 18 and being free, right?
Right? I like that. So we're going to take a small break, but when we come back, we're going to talk about the types of adoptions that the court recognizes and the various ways that they can be filed.
Okay.
Can we do that?
Yeah.
All right, excellent. We're going to come right back in a moment, and we're just going to take a small commercial break.
Create your restful retreat and save 50% now on all Tommy Bahama and Lexington furniture during the Home for the Holidays event at Sunshine Furniture. Sophisticated looks with a mix of coastal and Caribbean styles, Tommy Bahama offers everything you need for your personal paradise and is all half price. At Sunshine Furniture, we have the largest selection of in-stock coastal and casual sofas, love seats, chairs, slipcover sofas, bedroom dining, and occasional furniture from Four Seasons, Capri, Best Chair, Hooker, and Riverside. We're the outdoor furniture experts and have any style of patio furniture that you need, including a gallery of Made in America, Berlin Garden, Pollywood, Woodard, Lloyd Vlanders, and Telescope. We specialize in replacement cushions, umbrellas, and fire pits. Come in now for our Home for the Holidays event and winter sale. Don't forget to visit our outlet and sales center directly across the street, Sunshine Furniture, 1295 US 1 in the Publix Plaza Vero Beach. Visit our website at sunshinefurniturecasual.com.
At Evergreen Media, we know the people, the businesses, and the work needed to take your marketing to the next level. We know where locals go to shop, work, and have fun.
We're here to focus on your local advertising so you can focus on your business. This is our home. This is our business. Evergreen Media. We market, you grow.
Painless commercials, and we are so grateful for them. And we are even more grateful for our show sponsors. And so I want to give a shout out to Dill Evans Rotoback and Sebastian, with over 30 years experience and providing care in our community for families and real estate topics and concerns and elder care. Please don't hesitate to reach out to them if you ever have a need. We are very grateful for their sponsorship. So before we went to commercial, we kind of recapped the different most common forms of adoption. And that's great, because now we understand how do people go about, what scenarios would be appropriate and how do they refer to them. But now let's talk about what happens when you've made that choice and you know you're moving forward, and maybe you have a child that is part of your family, or a child that is appropriate in timing or age, or that is ready for adoption. Well, now the legality aspect of it is really going to have a heavy hand in it, right? So what does that look like? What happens when, say an aunt who's been taking care of their cousin's children for years, they've been in through the foster coverage, they want to go ahead and make it solid and commit to that adoption? What happens? What does the court say? And how does the court recognize these different adoptions? What happens once we enter in front of the bench?
Okay. So there's virtually two arenas where adoptions can take place. One is in Chapter 63, and that is basically the family law statute for adoptions that covers step-parent, relatives, adult adoptions, those things that we talked about. And then there's Chapter 39, which is the child abuse statute for Florida that covers foster care, closing out and permanent guardianship, which is kind of something that you were putting as a hypothetical just now, you may not have realized it, but that adult that you were speaking of would have been given some sort of guardianship paperwork over that child for an extended period. And then at that point, they want to terminate parental rights.
Oh, okay.
So the question that you're asking me is a little complicated to answer.
Sorry.
So I would have to say the first place to start with is with a consult, because you need to know where the custody kind of originated from. Because, for example, if you're getting a child from a mother who just gave birth in the hospital, that's a done thing, right? You've filed your petition, they've consented, you've got a whole packet put together, you have an adoption plan. You asked earlier about, the types of adoptions that you can have, and I'll just go ahead and kind of mix these two together.
Sure.
You can do in that scenario what you call an open adoption. And for sake of understanding for the listeners, there's 3 types. There's open, then there's the middle ground, which is called semi-open or semi-closed, depending on how you want to look at it, and then closed, okay? In the scenario where I'm talking, getting a child, from a mother who's just given birth and they've selected the adoptive parents, it's very common to have open adoptions in that. And an open adoption means mostly direct contact, right? You can have indirect contact like letters and photos and, postcards and those types of things. But direct contact would be being a part of that child's life, attending graduations, going to birthday parties, inviting them over for things, being a part of that child's life.
Right.
That's a huge commitment for an adoptive parent and can have all kinds of considerations that need to be thought of before implemented, right? But then you have the completely closed portion where there's complete anonymity and all those things. And in the semi portion, it's only letters and photos and things like that. And there's still some anonymity because it goes through potentially the adoptive agency. Like they're kind of like an intermediator.
So not a direct connector.
So it's not a direct connection.
But a potential avenue.
But a potential avenue where you can get photos. A lot of people want to see their kids grow up, so they want to see pictures, okay? So that just takes a regular petition. It's a regular packet, and then it can be open, semi-open, or closed, right? Okay. If you're going through the Chapter 39 child abuse type section that I'm talking about, if a parent voluntarily surrenders and that child is adopted by a relative or a friend or whoever they designate as the person they're consenting to adopt their child in that arena, they between themselves can work out the terminology, but really it's the arrangement as to is it open, semi-open, or closed. It could come and go. Now, that's not quite what you want because there's no contract for that, because the basis, the baseline is none in those type of adoptions unless the caregiver allows it, right? It would be none unless the person adopting wanted to allow that to happen. It's sticky. So sometimes they don't, sometimes they do. If it is an involuntary termination through the court and a foster parent is going to adopt, they have the option of having maybe the semi-open contact if they want to. But most of the times, the court always orders that the parent-child relationship is severed and there is no contact, and it goes like that. The best chance of someone who is giving their child up for adoption or having a child adopted would be to do it with a family member or somebody they know if they wanted to keep a relationship, in my opinion.
That makes sense.
I think if you do it through the state or if it's involuntary or anything like that, or even these international adoptions, it can be arranged because it could be private or it could be through an orphanage, in a different country, just as we're speaking. And it's kind of the same logic as going under the child abuse section here.
Okay.
Now, question.
Go ahead.
When it comes to these open adoptions, this doesn't mean that the biological parent has rights per se over the child.
You're correct. No rights, just access, information, contact.
And are there still parameters regarding contact? Like, they have to be invited to come see the child, or they have to be given permission to take the child out for lunch or something like that. There's still rules regarding, how much access they can actually get.
Yes, that's usually called an adoption plan, right? And most of the time that's put into kind of like an agreement or a contract that's signed And of course, it could be, modified at some point in time by the person that would be allowing the contact. But anybody who is adopted, I believe that the person who is adopting that child is the parent and can then make all decisions as a parent normally could, as if they were the one who gave birth to that child. So it's their child to raise however they see fit.
So even if it's open, they can close that door if needed to be proactive and protective for the environment, for that child's future and safety. I love that. So recap, because I love the recap.
I love
So we have an open adoption where the family could, with approval of the adopting family, be party to some level or extent that's comfortable for everybody. You have the semi, which is where they can maybe send letters, get some updates, but they're not actively involved. There's no connectivity and there's no interaction.
Mostly indirect contact is how you think about it.
And then lastly being the close, which sometimes is protective for the child's history, their future, their family wants to be anonymous, all of those things. So we've covered a lot, but before we wrap this up, because time is ticking, if somebody is intrigued by the idea of adopting, whether it's their cousin they've been taking care of, or because they're not able to have children, or they just want to embrace being a parental guidance for another person, what are some of the avenues they might seek through to get that information to begin that process?
Well, they could always contact me, and if I wasn't a right fit, I could refer to someone else. But specializing in child welfare and having these different types of adoptions under my belt, it's always best to determine what their specific situation calls for. And as you know, adoptions can be very expensive. So we want to make sure it's the most beneficial thing for everyone involved. And if someone needed me, and I would be more than happy to help, they could contact my office and my team would take care of them. It's the Chesnutt Law Firm, the Child Welfare Legal Team. My phone number is 772-492-3330, and they can reach us at our website at thechesnuttlawfirm.com.
Oh, I love that. Thank you for saying it, because sometimes our guests don't realize that we have playback on the weekends without the video. So we'll have these conversations and the listeners like, but who am I calling? So thanks. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
No, that's really informative. And you hear about multiple avenues all the time. And to have somebody like yourself who has been in the heat of it, so to speak, and the deep of it, you really are able to break down various forms and approach them and give them that information. So I agree. If you had to give out some parting information based on your 15 plus years experience, plus your personal experience, to families that are looking to get involved in the arena of adoption, what would you say? What would be the two most important things for them to consider?
I think you would want to consider the commitment that you're making. It's a lifelong commitment. And in my experience, I would have to give this as advice. You need to consult your household members on whether or not this is the best idea for your entire family. I have seen people get an idea, or they have a family member that they feel very, very desperately wanting to help, right? But that doesn't always mean that it's the best thing for you or your family. However, it is often the best thing for a child. And if you can do it, if you have the means to do it, the wherewithal to do it, and the heart to do it, I encourage anyone. It's not that complicated. We need people to adopt children and give them a nice, safe home. And so if you're interested, definitely let me know. And I have people I can connect you with all over the place for child welfare.
Right. And that brings us to the point that there are still, even though adoption is common, there are a ton of children in the foster system, the protective agencies that are actively seeking families.
And they're waiting. There's the heartgallery.org. Every agency, for us locally, we have Communities Connected for Kids. We have For Kids Only. That's a very good adoption network. These are agencies that have children available for adoption, and they're just ready and waiting.
I love that. I don't love that they're waiting. I love that there's so many groups actively involving themselves with our children.
And there's so much available to you if you're looking.
Thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your
ma'am.
experience, your information.
Yeah, it's been great. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Susan.
Yes,
Have a
ma'am.
good afternoon.
Thanks.
Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time.